Welcome to the Good Reading Podcast, proudly sponsored by Book People Gift Cards. A Book People gift card is the perfect gift for readers of all ages. Simply order your gift card online at bookpeoplegiftcards.org.au. Redeem at any one of over 500 bookshops across Australia. Visit bookpeoplegiftcards.org.au. Melissa Lucashenko is a Guri author of Bunjalung and European heritage. Her first novel was published in 1997, and since then her work has received many literary awards. Her sixth novel, Too Much Lip, won the 2019 Miles Franklin Literary Award. Today I'm talking to Melissa Lucashenko about the 2024 ARA Historical Novel Society of Australasia's prize-winning novel, Edenglassie. Melissa Lucashenko, welcome to the Good Reading Podcast.
Lovely to be here.
Melissa, congratulations on taking out the ARA Historical Novel Prize for 2024.
Thanks. Can't say how happy I am. It's a big deal.
Melissa, you're no stranger to creating prize-winning fiction and non-fiction. There's a very long list that includes the Dobby, the Aurora, the Stella, of course, the Miles Franklin, and along with the Walkley. But the Historical Novel Society of Australia Prize recognises Edenglassie as an outstanding work of historical fiction. At the core of Edenglassie are First Nations stories. What can historical fiction tell us about our past and our present that non-fiction can't?
I think what it can do is take readers into a world where they actually feel that they are transported into another era. The imagination is an incredibly powerful thing. And I wrote Edenglassie for many reasons, but one was so that when my mainstream readers hear about or read about or learn about the history of our country, that instead of picturing anonymous people or statistics, that they actually picture living, breathing people very much like themselves. And I think that's what historical fiction can do in a way that no other form really can.
At the centre of Edenglassie is the character of Mulanyin. He's not the first character we encounter in Edenglassie, but we first meet Mulanyin as a youth, just prior to the ceremony that will admit him to manhood. What did you draw on to create such a beautifully drawn character?
Oh, well, I spoke to the young Aboriginal men in my family and in my life. Mulanyin was actually the most difficult character to write. Granny Eddie, the feisty centenarian, I had a range of Aboriginal aunties and grandmothers I could call on. Winona, the young activist who wants to burn everything down, I could similarly call on a number of young women that I know to flesh her out. But Mulanyin, because he's a tribal man, born around the time of European invasion into southeast Queensland, I had to work quite hard to think about what matters to young men and to make him an ambitious and courageous and a really true to life character. And I mostly drew on my nephews along with my knowledge of Aboriginal law and culture.
And he's also got quite a serving of humility about him. There's a lovely scene, a beautiful passage in which Mulanyin is condemned rather than praised for catching the matriarch, this huge mulloway bearing eggs. What does he learn from that experience?
What he learns is to control himself, which is a central tenet of Aboriginal law, to submit yourself to the will of elders and the collective, and to have self-control and self-discipline. And it's because he demonstrates those characters in that passage that his parents then say, okay, he is ready now to go to his manhood ceremony. So I was using that to show what kind of a young man he was, that he had the qualities necessary to progress to adulthood.
And as he progresses to adulthood, the object of Mulanyin's desire is Nita, and so we have a love story too. But what are the conditions for love in the Brisbane of the 1850s?
Yeah, well, there's more than one culture clash happening. There is, of course, the European minority, which are about to outstrip the Aboriginal majority in Brisbane in the 1850s. What I also created was the meeting of Mulanyin as a tribal non-Christian with Nita, who's an Aboriginal girl who's an orphan who's grown up in the Scottish household of the Petrie family and is Christianized and to a large degree assimilated into European ways. So, they have a very strong attraction between them, romantic and sexual attraction, but they also have to negotiate these very different forms of Aboriginality in their relationship as the world is being transformed around them in a very radical way.
And that Scottish family you talk about are the Petrie family. They were perhaps a little unusual in their relations with First Nations people in the Brisbane of the 1850s. The Petrie family were real people.
Absolutely, yeah, they were a leading, if not the leading, white pioneer family of Brisbane, and the patriarch of that family, Andrew Petrie, was known as the grandfather of Brisbane. And his son, Tom Petrie, grew up with Yagara children, playing with them almost exclusively and speaking the language fluently, understanding the culture very fluently. And so when Tom comes to adolescence, he is also initiated and becomes both a white Scottish Australian and a Yagara man in through the eyes of Yagara tribes people at the time. And what that means is his life journey shows us how colonisation could have been different because Tom Petrie did what no other colonist did in southeast Queensland. He took up his pastoral run with the explicit blessing and permission of the traditional owners and in active consultation with them.
The very first character we meet is Eddie Blanket, or Granny Eddie, and she draws the story into the 21st century. Granny Eddie has always had a concern with dirt. Cantankerous is how I describe her. Apart from the fact that she's over 100 years old, why dirt and why so cranky?
um, well, she's got a lot of reasons to be cranky. Uh, you'll have to read the book to find out exactly what dirt means to Granny Eddie. But yeah, that's the voice of my grandmother, as my mother, sorry, in lots of ways, is in Granny Eddie. And Granny Eddie is a foil for her granddaughter Winona, who, as I said before, wants to burn everything down and has no truck with the colony whatsoever. Granny Eddie would normally agree with her, but Granny Eddie's on pethidine for the duration of the book, so she's a bit more mellow than she might normally be. And it's the conversations between the two of them that allow me as an author to explore uh, 21st century Aboriginal politics around not only identity, but about what it really means to behave as an Aboriginal person in a colonised space and what the future holds.
Winona is Eddie's granddaughter. Unfortunately, is the voice inside Winona's head. Today's going to be one of them stupid days, it tells her. For all the anger and frustration Winona exhibits, she also harbours quite a bit of ambition.
Yeah, and she's very clear about who she is and what she wants from the colony. She wants to get out of the confines of working for the man and to get some land back, and that's what most of her uh, days are spent trying to achieve. But she's waylaid by Granny Eddie's illness and Granny Eddie being in the hospital and needing her constant care and attention. And so their relationship deepens over the course of the book, and that allows Winona to grow as a person, to grow culturally, and to grow emotionally. And in a way, it also leads to her resolving the internal monologue that is quite possibly going to destroy her unless she finds a different trajectory.
Activist Winona meets Dr. Johnny, and so we have two love stories. This one, a slightly more uneasy one, I suppose, at least at first. Together they care for Granny Eddie, but can you inform history with fiction or even historical fiction, particularly told as two love stories 150 odd years apart?
What I'm interested in is opening up a conversation and expanding what Australia's idea, firstly, of us, but secondly, of itself is or are. Aboriginal people and Australian history have been boxed in and seen through quite narrow and I think unhelpful parameters. But if we can, for example, look at 1850s Brisbane and say, well, Aboriginal people in that period had businesses. Aboriginal people in that period outnumbered the Europeans. Aboriginal people in that period, were to a large degree self-determining of their futures before the mission era came in. You know, not to say that there wasn't massacres happening, there definitely was, and there was basically a frontier war outside of Brisbane at that time. But um, I think I forget who said it, but somebody said that the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. So maybe I'm writing to piss people off in order that the truth can set us all a bit more free.
I think there's quite a few who will be pissed off, but quite a few who might react in the opposite way too. But there's something quite epic about Edenglassie, maybe even an epic love story, I suppose. And I couldn't help feeling that the epic in this story kind of revolves around our humanity and perhaps even our lack of humanity.
Yeah, well, it is an epic story. It's a story that occurs over a very long period of time, and it takes in immense historical forces. You know, the I look at convictism. I look at the breaking apart of Queensland and New South Wales into two separate colonies. I look at very briefly, you know, touch on the issue of slavery in the US. I look at the relationships that exist across the Pacific. You know, there are Pacifica characters in the book. And most importantly, I bring in what is Aboriginal law and what was the system of governance in Australia before John Oxley sailed up the river and decided to give it a new name and new owners. You know, we were not wandering in the wilderness. We had a system of government. We had a constitution. We held parliaments, and we had a theology that makes Christianity look simple. All of these things, I think, contribute to the epic sense of the book in terms of replacing old, outdated, and inaccurate ideas of what was going on here in the 1850s.
The way Indigenous people measure time, and something I found really interesting, really fascinating, not the arbitrary four seasons of the calendar, but of seasonal events, the oyster season, the time of the whales, the mullet run. And it tells us so much about Australia we live in that we kind of have ignored.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, the four seasons aren't arbitrary. They are accurate, but they're accurate for a place that's 10,000 miles away from where Edenglassie is set. Uh, you know, at the moment at home on Bundjalung country, it's goanna season. You know, it's the time after winter when the goannas are coming out. Probably we're just coming to the end, have just come to the end of goanna season now. We're coming into storm season. Indigenous people all over the world uh, respond to the natural environment differently to Western or industrial people. And that was a really it was kind of easy and yet powerful way to tell the reader that they are in a different universe by using that different measure of time. And I have to thank a Gadigal man for encouraging me to strengthen that aspect of the book.
Along with your particular turn of phrase, Indigenous vocabulary, particularly Guri vocabulary, is significant in the telling of this story too. Dagai, the early white settlers in southern Queensland, and monkeys, their sheep. It's sometimes challenging to read, but also introduces humour into the proceedings.
Yeah, oh, there's so many funny stories, and I take great pleasure in creating funny prose. You know, it's fun. It's much more fun for me to write things that are amusing, and it's I know that it's fun for the reader. And yeah, no one wants to sit around crying into their beer all the time. So, and our lives, you know, our lives might be saturated by grief, but they're also seasoned by humour, and I wanted to show that on the page as well.
Edenglassie could have been a singularly dark story, but its humour takes it in a different direction. Just makes me wonder, are humour and truth, even the uncomfortable variety of truth, are there natural companions in your writing and in the writing of Australian historical fiction?
Well, there's nothing funnier than telling the truth to a powerful figure that hasn't been confronted with it before. Just ask Lydia Thorpe.
Yeah, she's good at it, that's for sure.
She sure is.
She knows the moment to choose. I'm not
Yeah,
sure if Charles and Camilla appreciated it. We didn't see their reaction, by the way, did we?
that's all right. We didn't appreciate their input for the last 200 years either.
I wondered also if we're in the midst of a resurgence of telling First Nation stories, or the beginning at least, a process of truth-telling, leaving behind that sort of broad brush of history and substituting it for a finer one, a more nuanced one.
We are, and that's a direct outcome of the Mabo decision in '94, I believe, because that has reshaped Indigenous politics and Indigenous societies in a big way, and it's completely reset the relationship between the Australian state and Aboriginal people. And so now, because there is a legal framework for the Australian state to relate to us within, it's a bit safer for mainstream Australia to acknowledge that we exist and then to begin to understand who we are and what we're about.
What hopes do you hold for the future, and how might that be reflected in Edenglassie?
I hope I get to drink some really good beer tonight. I don't know. I hope I get to keep writing books that I enjoy and my readers love to read. And yeah, I don't hope for treaty. I expect treaty, and I work towards treaty.
Are we ushering in perhaps a new age, a new phase of nation building, a different nation?
Yeah, that's well underway, I think. That's well underway. You know, the you can fool some of the people some of the time and all of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And yeah, we're not going away, you know. First Nations aren't going anywhere. So sooner or later, we will have treaty and we will have a better Australia.
Melissa Lucashenko, thank you so much for joining me on the Good Reading Podcast.
A little bit. Thanks, son.
I've been talking to Melissa Lucashenko about her ARA Historical Novel Society of Australasia's award-winning book for 2024, Edenglassie. It's published by University of Queensland Press, and you can find it at goodreadingmagazine.com.au. My name's Greg Dobbs, and thanks for listening. This Good Reading Podcast was brought to you by Book People Gift Cards. Share the joy of reading with a Book People gift card. To find out more, visit bookpeoplegiftcards.org.au.